Welcome back to the channel. This is the Action Figure Grader. It's Sunday. It's time to go through some more recent sales on eBay for CGC graded comics. Lots of big time books in this one. Most of these are, I would say, bronze, copper, and modern, but most of these are bronze and copper, really. And there are some books on here that are very tough to get in a 9.8. So I pulled out two from the Go Collect data just to compare where the prices are for two that you don't see very often versus some of the all-time highs and what they're doing now. So thanks as always for watching. Really appreciate those of you that tune into my channel. Let's start off with a couple of really big books that, you know, I'm not saying that I'm into them because I'm not really. The Crow was an interesting movie with Brandon Lee back in the day, and they tried to revive it, did a pretty terrible job with the remake apparently, but this book is notoriously tough to get in a 9.8, and I kind of wanted to see how this sale compares to historical data. It's pretty mind-blowing, really. But this one for a 9.8 of the Crow #1, because of the black border, because of the low print run, it's just nearly impossible to get a 9.8 in this book. It was listed for $7,700, and I was like, whoa, that seems like a big number. The final sales price in a make an offer situation was $6,500. That's a lot of money for a 1989 book. But when you go back and look at the census data, here it is. Now, there's been 987 copies of this particular book graded, which is not a big number, really. You think about it. 1,000 copies under that have been graded. So it's not a very high print run book. And for the 9.8 population, there's the 7.9% of all the books graded have gotten a 9.8. 78 books total. The highest price ever paid for this book was $18,000, obviously during the massive COVID bubble. And this was back in January 2022, which you could maybe make an argument that was basically peak prices, right? $18,000 in present dollar value, that's $20,651. So since then, it's obviously come back down to earth, as you'd expect. Everything at the upper end of that price range for fairly modern books seems to be about 60% off. That seems to be kind of the theme when we look at the Go Collect data, 60% off-ish. And this one is no exception, obviously. So $20,000 in present dollar value, $20,651 today. Someone paid $6,500, and you look at an auction, one actually went for even less, $63.18. Another one that was fixed price sold for $6,300. That was over a year ago. The one at $63.18 was in March of this year in an auction again. So pretty consistently lately, it's been going for between $6,300 and $6,500, and I just think personally that I don't see the appeal of dropping that kind of coin on a character that is very, very niche. But that's, you know, if you're a Crow fan, then go for it and you got the money. But the other interesting one that has also really come back down to earth is Aliens #1 from Dark Horse Comics. Another black cover, another fairly low print run book, although not nearly as low print run as the Crow #1. This one sold in a buy it now for $1,800, 9.8 with white pages. And so I wanted to at least show you before we dig into some of these other books that are fairly common, what this book has done. And when you look at the CGC graded copies for 9.8s, there's 111 of them. So that's another book that is fairly tough to get in terms of 9.8 grade. And in terms of the census count, it's actually less than the Crow. Remember, the Crow in a 9.8, 7.9% of them have been graded a 9.8. Versus Aliens #1, which admittedly has a bigger CGC population report of 1537 versus 987. So it's about, let's call it 50 to 60% larger in terms of the overall population of books that have been graded by CGC. But in terms of the 9.8 ratio, it's actually less than the Crow, which I thought was interesting at 7.2%. So the top price ever paid for this book was $7,500 in present value, dollar value. It's $79.74, so almost $8,000. And again, this one sold for $1,800. And this one has been consistently going down since late 2024. You see a couple of sales at $2,400, $3,500, $2,125 at an auction, another fixed price in May of this year for $2,300, and then a fixed price sale in June of this year for $1,759, and then again this one at $1,800. So it seems to be hovering in that $1,700 to $1,800 price point right now. I like this book a lot. I think it's a cool book, and as a franchise, right, Aliens and Predator are probably the two big ones from the Dark Horse era that have some legs, that are probably going to continue to get lots of new content and will continue to be fairly popular in terms of pop culture. But that I thought was an interesting sale at $1,800. On to some other books, and speaking of Predator versus Aliens, this is Dark Horse Presents number 36. This is the first appearance of Aliens versus Predator, which I'm sure we're going to get another one of those at some point. And, Predator Badland, I don't know if there's going to be any references to aliens in that, but it seems like there is, with the cyborg that is kind of the sidekick in the movie. That's an Aliens kind of thing, with the cyborg that is kind of like half torn apart. But this is my favorite of the two covers, and we've got the other cover here in a second. But Dark Horse Presents number 36, again, a black cover, but this one is a fairly easy one to get in a 9.8. It was listed for $220. The sales price in a make an offer situation was $160. I found yet another sale at $200. And then you had this sale, which was at an auction for both covers. Both of them were 9.8s with white pages. And again, I like the cover A better, but there is a second cover variation for Dark Horse Presents number 36. Again, this auction had both of them in a 9.8. And the two of them together went for $203.49, which seems like a really good deal given that the cover A sold separately by itself for $160 and $200. So great buy on this one to get both covers for that price. Next up, another one I really like, I wouldn't mind getting, is Marvel TeamUp number 141. This one was the newsstand edition. In an auction, it sold for $686. That price is down relative to kind of the going rate over the last year and a half of $900 to about $1,000. So that's one that's really come back down to earth, as a lot of Copper and Bronze Age books have. This one is Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars number 8, and obviously the direct edition. I think if you're going to get this book, I'd probably recommend getting the newsstand. The direct edition is just so plentiful on the census, on the CGC population report, that they come up every week, really. And this one sold for $530. I think I would spring a little bit more money and get the newsstand, though, if you're looking for this book in a 9.8. Another really great ASM book is ASM number 252. This was the newsstand edition. This is tied with that Marvel Team-Up 141 for the first appearance of the black suit Spidey. Obviously, this one goes for more money because of the Amazing Fantasy 15 homage with the black suit Spidey. And this is one I do have in my collection. It was listed for $1,500. The best offer accepted was $1,325. So this book has come down just a little bit, not a ton. $1,500 to $1,600 was about the going rate, and I bought mine, about almost 2 years ago for, I think, $1,600 and $1,325. So it has come down just a smidge, but don't overpay for it because it is fairly easy to find in both a direct and a newsstand. But $1,325 for this book seems to be kind of about the going rate right now. Another big one, and one that's on my want list, and maybe I'll get eventually. This was a beautifully centered copy, really pretty colors. I think I had this in a What to Buy video, letting folks know it was at auction. It sold for $24.26, and that is the direct edition of ASM 300, the origin and first appearance of Venom. Pretty classic book, Todd McFarlane cover. This one had particularly nice colors, though. One thing I always look at is the foot for Spider-Man. If that blue has a really nice color strike, as this one seems to have, and this was also nicely centered, as you can tell, just a little bit off from the top to bottom with the 300s, but not by much. Freshly graded. This was a primo copy, and it went for $24.26, which is, if I was going to bid on one, that's probably about the bid that I would make, is $2,400. Again, this one was going for well above that number during the comic book peak, but seems to have settled in nicely in that $2,400 price range. But an absolutely gem of a book. Is it the optimal investment grade for a fairly common 9.8, probably not. The 9.6 or even the 9.4 could probably make that argument as the optimal investment grade. But if you want to get it in a 9.8, you're going to have to pay up for it. And even with the the larger census count of a 9.8 for this particular book, it's still holding pretty steady in that $2,400 price range. Here was an interesting one I had not seen in a while. This is the UPC Gold Edition, meaning the newsstand edition of the Spider-Man #1 from 1990, the Gold Edition, but it's got that barcode in the lower left that is the newsstand, and it's very tough to find this particular book in a newsstand, and the price reflects that. In a direct edition, this is like, what, 150 bucks max? Maybe a little bit more because the Gold Edition, but $1,500 for the newsstand. That's a pretty significant price multiple relative to the standard direct edition. And I believe that, there's obviously several. There's like a platinum, there's a gold, there's a silver, and the Gold Edition is one of the premium editions, even in the direct edition version of it. But the newsstand UPC Gold Edition apparently was a Walmart newsstand. So interesting sale there. But there's a ton of different variations. You got to know what you're bidding on, but that's one I had not seen in a long time. Batman number 423 is one of my favorites. This is obviously the direct edition. Very tough to find this one in a newsstand, but my friend Gary Wallace sent me some photos from, I think he was at SDCC, and he went to like a comic book wing of the SDCC, and they had this Batman. It was a very similar statue for Batman 423 with the kind of the wild cape. It had his real face and not just a shadow for his face, but he sent me that by private message, and it was really cool to see that statue. So Gary, thank you for sharing that with me. But this is one of my favorite books, and this is another one that has come down just a little bit, very similar to ASM 252 in a newsstand, where it's come down just a smidge. This one consistently was going $1,700 to $1,800 even 6 months ago. This one in an auction sold for $1,540. This was freshly graded, as you can tell by the serial number there, starting with 46. And that was a beautiful book. So $1,540, great price to pay relative to where this one has been going for recently. I've got several different sales, and it's pretty crazy how wide the price disparity is for a direct edition of Hulk 340, which this is the second meeting between Hulk and Wolverine, second fight, I should say, and it's a pretty timeless Todd McFarlane cover. I've actually got 3 of these. I got 2 directs and 1 newsstand, and this direct edition sold at an auction for $955. This is the price you want to aim for if you're looking for this book in a 9.8. It's not hard to find in a 9.8. They sell all the time. I've got 3 in this batch alone, but this one sold for $955. This one was a buy it now at $11.50. And you see that all the time with Hulk 340, where the buy it nows are consistently in that $1,000 to $1,200 range. But then if you wait for an auction, which they will come up, I promise you, whether it's Comic Link or Heritage or Hakes or even on eBay, these direct editions in a 9.8 with white pages are not tough to find. So wait for an auction because you're going to get a much better deal. But anyway, that one did sell for $955. This one sold at $11.50, and then this one sold in a make an offer situation for $955. So this buyer obviously knew his data and said, I don't care if you got it listed at $12.50. If you want to sell it to me, here's my offer of $955, which is what the last one sold for. So this buyer did his research and paid the $955 number. This one paid the beefy price, a little bit too much money at $11.50. So just try to be patient, try to be strict and disciplined. You lack discipline. This is what I tell my kids all the time. You lack discipline. And then I make a whipping noise like I'm going to whip them. And I never do, of course, because I'm a big softie. My mom, their mom, my wife is the tough one. She will do the whipping. She will do the whipping. I threaten the whipping, and then they laugh at me, okay? But be disciplined in your purchases is what I'm trying to get at. Don't pay the big boy number. And then we also had a couple of other Hulk books that I wanted to point out. These are all Todd McFarlane covers, just like Hulk 340. Hulk 344 is a pretty awesome cover. This one sold for $518.91. This was the direct edition, and it was signed by Todd McFarlane. I think that's a really unique one to get signed. It's not one I would have thought of But that yellow signature really matches nicely with the yellow moon behind the Hulk. And I just thought that was a really cool idea to get that one in particular signed by Todd McFarlane. So a signature series 9.8 with white pages sold for $518. Todd McFarlane's signature as it is can go for $350 on any book, even on a comic book. So I think to get that one for $518 was a pretty good deal. This one is another Hulk book that was sold by my buddy Han Solo. So be sure to keep an eye out for him. Jason is his name. He's a really good friend of mine. He's kind of downsizing his collection currently, and he has lots of really good inventory, lots of tougher to find 9.8s. But his eBay page is Han Star _star Solo. So go check him out on eBay because he's consistently listing lots of nice books as he downsizes his collection. But this is Hulk 345, the very next book. Another great cover from Todd McFarlane. That's what I wouldn't mind having at some point. That one sold for $475. We've got a Punisher. This is, I believe, the only 9.6 I have in this batch, but this is Punisher Limited Series number 1, a great Mike Zeck cover. Love this book. I've got this one in a 9.8 direct edition. I would love to pick this one up at some point in a newsstand, but this one in a 9.6 sold for $190.60. You can probably add about 2.5 times that number, maybe 2 times that number to get a 9.8 with white pages. It's usually about $450 to $500 right now. So let's call that about 2.5 times versus this sales price of $190.60. Another good one to look for in a newsstand is Silver Surfer number 44. This is from 1990. Little tougher to find the newsstands. This is the first appearance of the Infinity Gauntlet in comics. It's got Thanos and the Silver Surfer there. Really great looking book, and I like it. I would love to get this one in a newsstand. This one sold for $315. The direct edition's going for about half that price at about $140 to $150. So, but you know, again, for a 1990s or later book, if you can find it in newsstand for not too much of a premium, in this case, I think that's a reasonable premium to pay, going from the direct edition, which is again about $140 to $150, versus the newsstand paying up for $315. That's a price difference I'd pay, right? That's a price difference I'd pay. I think that's a pretty reasonable price difference to pay. Another one I'd really like, and one I do have, is Marvel Comics Presents number 79 from 1991 in a 9.8. with white pages. This one sold for $250. I have seen them go for closer to $200 sometimes, but it's a great cover. It's not like a big key issue, but it's kind of viewed by the comic book community as the best comic book cover for the Weapon X version of Wolverine. And I agree. It's just awesome. Marvel Comics Presents number 72 is the start of the origin story for Weapon X / Wolverine. But this one is the one that people pay up for because it's tougher to find in a 9.8. It's also just a really cool cover. I mean, that is as good as it gets right there. John Byrne cover there. Next up, we've got a newsstand edition of Uncanny X-Men number 221. This is the first appearance of Mr. Sinister. This is one where you gotta pay up big time for the newsstand edition. People really pay up for this one versus the direct edition. The direct edition is really easy to find for $300-ish, but the newsstand for this book is a big multiple. It's about 3x that you got to pay for it. This one sold for $975. I think in an auction you might get it sub $900, but very consistently this book is selling $850 and above in a newsstand 9.8. But it's not my favorite cover from the Mr. Sinister related books. I think it's 239 or 234. I can't remember, but it's got Mr. Sinister on the cover. And it's just a better cover, but this is his first appearance, and again, another one that's a little bit tougher to find in the newsstand. Next up, I've got some more sales data for New Mutants 98. This one sold in an auction for $974, and if you remember, in the last Hakes session, there was one of these that was freshly graded, perfectly centered, 9.8 with white pages that sold for $787, $786, I believe, somewhere in there. And this one, again, on eBay sold for $974. So that really shows you what a great deal that was. That was after the buyer's premium as well on Hakes. So there can be some good deals on Hakes for, you know, fairly common 9.8s. And, you know, they're so busy looking at other stuff or harder to find books or more rare or more expensive books, that the more common stuff will get passed over. And that sale on Hakes is looking better and better at $7.86 relative to what they're going for on eBay. Here was another one that was a direct edition. This one even had part of her foot cut off, Domino's foot cut off, so it wasn't a perfectly centered copy. That one sold for $1,000, and then finally yet another book sold for $10.50. So the prices again are all over the map, just like with Hulk 340. Be patient, wait for the auction for these high number, high census count books, and you'll get a much better deal. I hope you enjoyed this look at recent sales for CGC graded books. Thank you as always for watching, and I'll be back soon.